Hello, my name's Mary, and I'm coming to you from the children's room at the Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. And today, we're going to talk about marathons. We're going to talk about the Boston Marathon, and we're going to talk about women running marathons. This is March and Women's History Month, so it's a good time to share the history of women in this particular event. First, a little bit about marathons. Now, marathons have a very long history, and it all began with the storied, and some would even say fabled, run of Phidippides, sometimes referred to as Philippides, when he ran from the Battle of Marathon to Athens to announce the battle was won by the Greeks in 490 BC. The distance was approximately, roughly 25 to 26 miles. Well, when the modern Olympics began in 1896, the marathon was a premier event. The officials starting the Olympics wanted to bring something that would connect the modern Olympics back with ancient Greece. So the marathon became a premier event. Now at that time, when people ran a marathon, it was roughly 25 to 26 miles. It depended on terrain. It depended on where it was being run. It depended on a lot of different things. But finally, in 1921, they standardized the distance of the marathon. It became 26.2 miles. Now, just a year after those 1896 Olympics, in 1897, the Boston Marathon began. It was held on April 19th, Patriots' Day. It's the world's oldest run annual marathon. It's run from Hopkinton to Copley Square. It's traditionally held on Patriots' Day, the third Monday in April. And it's been run every year since 1897. During World War I in 1918, they had a special relay with only 10 men running, but it was run. But it was canceled in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And this year, 2021, it's scheduled not for April, but for October, and again, because of COVID-19. Well, during all of this running, from 1896 forward, women had no long-distance races such as marathons. A few women had run the distance, but they were never included in any of the official results. No one really paid attention to the time, and in fact, very few people paid much attention to them. In 1918, Marie-Louise Ledru, a French athlete, was credited as the first woman to complete a marathon. And in 1926, Violet Piercy, an English athlete, was credited as the first woman to be officially timed in a marathon. In 1959, Arlene Piper became the first woman officially to finish a marathon in the U.S. when she completed the Pikes Peak Marathon in Colorado. Well, the Olympics finally, officially added a women's Olympic marathon event. It was introduced as an event at the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. And that very first event was won by Maine's own Joan Benoit Samuelson, the very elite runner from this state. Now, back to Boston. The Boston Marathon Rule Book, until after the 1967 race, made no mention of gender, nor did the Amateur Athletic Union, the AAU. They did not exclude women from races that included men until after the 1967 Boston Marathon. A separate women's race was not established at the Boston Marathon until 1972. Now, if you notice, a women's race was established in Boston in 1972, but it took another 12 years, which would have been 3 Olympics, before it was introduced at the Olympic Games. Now, Roberta Bobby Gibb is recognized by the race organizers, the Boston Marathon race organizers, as the first woman to run the Boston Marathon in 1966. Gibbs' attempt to register, to officially be in the race, was refused by race director Will Cloney in a letter in which he claimed women were physiologically incapable of running 26 miles. Gibb finished the 1966 race unofficially without a bib number in 3 hours, 21 minutes, and 40 seconds. She was ahead of 2/3 of the other runners. Then a year later, in 1967, Katherine Switzer, who registered for the race using her official AAU registration number, and she paid the entry fee, and she provided a properly acquired fitness certificate. And she signed her entry form with her usual signature, K.V. Switzer. It's how she signed everything. Her college papers, articles she wrote, everything was signed K.V. Switzer. She became the first woman to run and finish with a valid official race registration. She got a bib number. As a result of Switzer's completion of the race as the first officially registered woman runner, the AAU changed the rules to ban women from competing in races against men. Switzer finished the race despite an infamous incident in which race official Jock Semple repeatedly assaulted her in an attempt to rip off her race numbers and eject her from the race. In 1996, the BAA, the Boston Athletic Association, retroactively recognized as champions the unofficial women's leaders 1966 through 1971. And in 2015, about 46% of the entrants at the Boston Marathon were female. And now let me show you a few materials in our collection. Now we have not one, but two biographies about Bobby Gibbs. And Bobby Gibbs is the woman who ran unofficially in 1966 at the Boston Marathon. This book is called The Girl Who Ran. Bobby Gibbs, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. And she really wanted to run this race. And she tried to officially enter the race. But all she kept hearing from everyone around her was, girls can't run, girls can't run. But she really felt that she could do it. So she did. She entered the race by, in an unofficial way, by hiding behind bushes at the starting line. And she waited for the starting gun to fire. And when it did, she jumped out with a hooded sweatshirt, hood over her head, and ran with the other runners. Well, it was a warm day when she was running, and she really wanted to remove the sweatshirt, but she really felt that if she did, they'd see she was a girl and drag her off the course. But all the men running around her said, take off the sweatshirt. We won't let them remove you. You're one of us. You're a runner. And so she did, and she completed the race. But the second book we have is called Girl Running, Bobby Gibbs, and the Boston Marathon. And as I said, she did officially register until she got her rejection letter, which said, we will not be able to send you an application. Women are not physiologically able to run 26 miles, and furthermore, the rules do not allow it. Well, she got her mother to drive her to the starting line. She bought a new pair of sneakers to run the race. Again, she was hiding behind those bushes, jumped out, and ran with the other runners when the starting gun fired. And she did finish that race. But the one thing she learned, which you can tell with these feet being highlighted that way, is never run a race with a new pair of sneakers. By the end of the race, her feet were bleeding, but she was so excited by having finished the race, I doubt she felt much pain at all. Now, we also have a book about Katherine Switzer. She's the woman who ran in 1967. Now, Katherine was checking the rule books too. Katherine checked the rule book, and the section titled The Marathon said nothing about the distance being only for men. The entry form said nothing about it either. After all, women weren't supposed to sweat. Women weren't supposed to compete. They were too weak, too fragile to run that far. That's what people still thought. Now, the day Katherine ran, a mere year after Bobby's run, it was snowing as they ran. That's April in New England. You just don't know what the weather will be. But also seen in this book, which is called Her Fearless Run, Katherine Switzer's historic Boston Marathon. Katherine, as you can see, had an official bib number. And this is the incident where Jock Semple tried to push her off the course and tried to rip the bib number from her. Now, she did never, ever try to disguise herself, as I said. In fact, it said she turned up at the starting line with makeup and earrings. So she was just another athlete running the race. Well, as Jock Semple was trying to remove her from the course, other runners came and pushed him aside so that she was able to complete the race. So she became the first official woman's entrant because she did get the bib number and was an official registrant. But they didn't consider her official at that time because, as reported, it wasn't until 1972 that women were finally allowed to race in the women's section of the Boston Marathon. Now, it says right here, it's important to note that Katherine Switzer did not intentionally mislead race officials. She signed her entry form using her initials, KV Switzer, simply because that's how she was accustomed to signing things, college papers and articles she wrote for the school newspaper. Her health form, which was required for all runners, was completed using her full name. Katherine even put on makeup and earrings for the race. Well, when Katherine, at the end of the race, was asked, why Boston? Why wear numbers? Katherine's answer was simple. I like to run. Women deserve to run too. And because of Katherine and Bobby, women were finally able to become marathon runners. And in 2017, on April 17th, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Boston Marathon run of Katherine in 1967, she ran the marathon again, and she finished with an official time of 4 hours and 44 minutes. Afterward, Katherine's bib number was officially retired by the Boston Athletic Association. So these books on Bobby Gibb and on Katherine Switzer are just examples of books we have in our collection about trailblazing women. And if you want to learn a little more about the ancient Greek history of the marathon, we also have a book called The First Marathon, The Legend of Phidippides. And this tells the story of his run from the Battle of Marathon to Athens. And fabled or not, it is still a good story. So, I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of history about marathons and women in marathons, and I hope you come and find some of these books in our collection. So my name is Mary, and I'm coming to you from the Children's Room at the Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. And until next time, bye-bye.